Hey everybody, my name is Matt Soderberg, and I went ahead and created a presentation on Windows 8 and a new feature within Windows 8 called the Fast Startup option. So, you mean I no longer have enough time to take my coffee break? Well, with Windows 8, this new feature, like I said, called Fast Startup option, basically during shutdown turns off the user session but keeps the kernel sessions running in hibernate mode, otherwise known as a hyperfill.sys system file, which you probably heard of, that is implemented within Windows 7. Unlike full hibernation mode, only the system state and memory content is stored to disk, which Windows then easily restores along with reinitializing the necessary drivers on the next boot. This in turn uses less power and resources to complete the load process, which can have you on a desktop screen in considerably less time than Windows 7. Using Windows 8 for the first time, I noticed that it booted up in probably about 6 or 7 seconds, and I thought something was wrong. I wasn't sure that the operating system hadn't fully loaded yet. I thought I was missing something or something was going on. So then I did my research and found that Windows actually took some time to look into this issue and figure out how to break it down and make it quicker. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this. The first question is, do you shut down, do you put your computer to sleep, or do you hibernate? Boot times are probably one of the most scrutinized tests when it comes to computers, because it reveals so much about the overall system performance. Now, depending on if you have a laptop or a desktop or both, what do? It's really up to the person. But based on a poll that I found out there on the internet, basically showed that with Windows 7 and laptop users, their power transitions between shutdown and sleep mode are pretty much the same. Whereas about 11% of them are putting their laptops into hibernate mode. So this makes sense. For me, I like to shut down my laptop. I don't like there to be a power drain, but it depends. If I need to take the laptop somewhere and I'm currently working on something, or have multiple windows open and I just, don't have the time to shut down and save everything properly, I'll throw it into sleep mode for sure. But you just don't want to forget about it. With desktops, it's a little bit different. Shutdown is more popular. I like to say that I shut mine down pretty much whenever I'm not using it. I don't have anything that's set up where I need to leave it on all the time. Looks like about 42% of the users are putting it to sleep, and a small percentage, 1% or so, are putting their desktops into hibernate mode. Which doesn't surprise me for a desktop. I figure with a desktop you don't want it running all the time, just constantly pulling a draw. It's better just to shut it off. So, when you consider the ratio of users who choose to shut down completely or sleep, you should also consider why they choose to do this. I kind of touched on this before, but powering off the computer during a shutdown, this means that there's no power, so it preserves battery life, especially for a laptop. Very important. This also allows for a fresh start rather than continuing off of a previous session, whether it be a change in the PC configuration, a Windows update, a patch, so on and so forth. These all can require reboots, and sometimes a fresh start is just the trick to get your PC up and running just as quickly as it was before. Sleep mode. So in sleep mode you do have a fast on-off transition, which is great because you don't have to worry about waiting for the PC to boot up fully, and it's going to bring you back right back to where you left off. This only consumes a small amount of memory to keep the contents in RAM, but remember it is still pulling some power from your battery. Alright, so the challenge for Microsoft was to meet the needs of today's users without requiring a new piece of hardware. The goal is to have zero power draw when the system is off, a fresh session after boot, and of course the faster boot time. They accomplished this by utilizing a process that had already existed in Windows, which was basically a combination of hibernate mode and a cold start, or shutting down completely before powering back on. And they call this a hybrid boot, so it's kind of a combination of the two, whereas, like I touched on earlier, it creates a hibernate file to store the drivers and meat and potatoes of what you're doing. Alright, here's a little representation of the different phases between a cold boot and a fast startup. So with a cold boot, your computer's going to post, of course, and then it's going to go into system initialization, where the drivers, the services, and the session are loaded. After those all load, you'll be prompted with a Windows login screen, and then your user session will initialize and then come to your desktop. With Windows 8, your system will post, of course, and it's going to go directly into the hybrid file, which was saved from the previous shutdown. It reads this file from the disk, and then it will initialize your drivers once again, and then you'll be prompted with a Windows login, and then your user session will be initialized. The hybrid file read is really what cuts down on the boot time significantly right here. Alright, so here's a sample of test results from System Integration Test Labs, and basically it's showing that Windows 8 systems compared to Windows 7 systems boot about 30 to 70% faster. So what they did is they took about 30 PCs with Windows 7 on it, they tested the boot times, then they threw Windows 8 on there and tested the boot times again. I didn't have too much information as far as where this information came from exactly and how it was derived, but it appears that these all had regular spinning hard disk drives in them, and it kind of varies as far as the amount of difference in time between the two on the systems, but it looks like there's a pretty good variety there to base it off of. So with Windows 8, looks like on the lower end it's booting in about 15 seconds, between 15 and, let's say, 32, and Windows 7 is booting between about 25 up to as much as like 73, which doesn't surprise me. Alright, so the advantages of this are that it is significantly faster than older versions of Windows. When you compare to 7, it's quicker. When you compare it to XP, it is much quicker. The drivers are still initialized in fast startup mode. Therefore, those who like to perform a full reboot to refresh the system need not worry. This is great if there's something that you're concerned about that may be hanging up the system. You want to do a full reboot. This should not cause any issues. With that said, there is the option to turn off this fast startup mode. So just keep that in mind. You can force it to just boot regularly as well if you're concerned about something not loading or configuring properly or getting hung up in the system. This works fast on a hard disk drive, and of course even faster on an SSD. I can only speculate on the times, but from what I've noticed with a hard disk drive, about 6 or 7 seconds. I'm going to guess that on an SSD, a clean load could probably, or a clean install could probably load in about, a few seconds, to be honest. Alright, less stress on hardware. That's another advantage of this, just because of the way that it loads, and it detects any changes in PC configuration, which will ignore the hibernate file at the next boot to run a normal startup process. So this goes along with what I said with the second advantage, where the drivers are initialized in fast startup mode. Windows 8 will actually detect if there's a change that requires a normal reboot in order to configure, and it'll force that change, or it'll force a normal startup process versus using the hibernate file. Disadvantages. The hybrid file default size is about 75% of the physical RAM, therefore it could take up a lot of space on your hard drive. Let's say your RAM capacity is 8 gigs. You could potentially store 6 gigs worth of data onto your hard drive. So you want to keep that in mind if your hard drive space is limited. Also, it may not recognize all configuration changes that require a reboot in order to work properly. I've seen articles out there where they have issues with NVIDIA drivers, for instance, and a reboot will not allow it to configure properly. So just keep that in mind. There may be a little bit of manual work involved. Alright, so how does this affect the user? Well, faster boot times equals more productivity over time. That's just one of the most important things in for the end user, and even in like a work environment as well. And everyone's happy. You know, you have a faster working computer. You're just more satisfied overall. Alright, so fast startup can be turned off by navigating to your power options. So what you'll do is in Windows 8 just search for power options and click on choose what the power buttons do, which is on the left side. Then you click change settings that are currently unavailable, and then check the option for turn on fast startup. This should be checked by default, but you have the ability to remove it here as well. Just keep in mind that you don't want to actually delete your hyperfill.sys file, because that will basically eliminate the possibility or the capability of you to be able to turn on and off this feature. Alright, and then change your save your changes, and then reboot your system, and you're good to go. Alright, so to sum things up, fast startup will yield benefits on almost all systems, whether it be a hard disk drive or an SSD. Most users welcome this change, as it was accomplished in a fashion that doesn't require specialized hardware or resources, which is huge. Sleep Resume seems to be the best option for these days for laptop users. However, it still consumes power, whereas fast startup eliminates the need and can still get you into a desktop in under 10 seconds. So hopefully fast startup is something that's here to stay. From what I've seen with Windows 10 so far, it seems to boot very quickly, so I think that they're utilizing that same feature that they did in Windows 8. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. Take care.